Hello everyone. I am making this video to cover the current status of the mod that I'm writing for Vintage Story called Pyrogenesis. This mod addresses a few of the complaints that I have with the stock fire mechanics. I'll go ahead and cover those issues briefly here. What you see in front of you is a creative world that I have set up. It's just a more or less infinite plane of these medium fertility soils. At the top, you'll notice it says grassy. If I come over here, you'll see some other medium soils. This one just says medium soil. This is sparse grass. This is patches, and finally grassy. These are kind of like 4 evolutionary steps of the soil block. Unfortunately, it's kind of brownish in my game because of where I'm located in the game world. I'm in a relatively northern part of this world, so it's kind of like permanently winter. You can see that there's already starting to be some grass tufts growing on top of it. Now, these grass tufts are part of the problem. I can come up to them and I can harvest them with a knife and get a crafting item. And if I harvest them a second time where it goes completely away, the grass is effectively destroyed. It will not regrow. The generation of these grass tufts is tied to the evolution of the texture on the soil blocks. So as they go from, barren to sparse grass to the patches of grass, and then finally to the grassy, each time there's a transition, there's an opportunity for grass to grow. Now the issue with fire is that it burns all of the plant life off of the top, including these grass tufts, but it does not change the underlying texture of the grass block. So if it remains grassy like this, the grass tufts will never have an opportunity to regenerate. So after a forest fire or just any kind of wildfire, you're left with a giant boring green plain like this instead of having periodic tufts of grass. And I think that is aesthetically unpleasing. So I wrote this mod to address that particular issue. Now, I've also made a couple of other enhancements, which I'll go ahead and demonstrate. Now, on both sides of me, I have more or less an identical setup. I have a maple tree, an oak tree in the center, and then a pine tree. And I have them surrounded by a kill box. This one over here is broken. There is some soil that allows the fire to spread via these grass strips to the neighboring trees. Now, this fire might actually spread to one of the neighboring trees anyways. As you'll notice, there is some almost overlap here with the trees. A couple of the issues that have to deal with the tree burning mechanic in the vanilla Vintage Story code is that, number one, when trees burn, there's an opportunity for floating logs and leaf blocks to be left behind, which is relatively unsightly. And in addition to that, the forest fires can get out of hand. Now, in the real world, the trunks are a lot more resilient to burning than the canopy. And a canopy fire, like fire spreading from one tree to the next via the leaves, is not likely going to take the entire tree down. It can, but I want to limit that behavior. So what my code does, and you'll probably catch it here, I'm going to go ahead and set fire to this case over here where they're not connected on the ground. And as it burns, I'll discuss some of the things that are taking place. If I don't set myself on fire, that is. Now, for those of you familiar with Vintage Story, you're probably going to catch some differences in behavior here very quickly. It looks like the fire ended up spreading to the tree on the left anyways. And there was the first change. As you notice, there were a bunch of leaves that were basically destroyed in one event. Fire does not do that in the Vintage Story vanilla code. You'll never hear that breaking sound, you'll just hear the sound of fire ravaging through the tree. The intent of that action is to kind of prune the outer perimeter of the leaves to avoid the chances of a floating leaf block sitting out there, but it also tends to create some separation between the trees to kind of limit the possibility of a runaway forest fire where fires are spreading through the canopy. As you can see on the ground as this is burning, some of these soil blocks have been rendered barren. Also, what you'll notice is that instead of medium fertility soil, they are high fertility soil. The mod has a random probability of changing the soil type and enriching it due to the burning organic material. That is another realism enhancement that I felt was necessary for the game. Now, the chances of the soil being upgraded in fertility decrease as the fertility increases. I've recently made some changes to the percentages so that Terra Preta doesn't get created very often. In fact, it's incredibly rare that it does get created now. And those percentages are all configurable within the config file for the mod. Now, I haven't seen any seeds drop yet. It has been dropping logs. Occasionally the logs that will drop will be burning, and they'll get thrown some distance from the tree in some case, and those flaming pieces of debris can help set off neighboring fires as well. One of the next enhancements that I plan on making to this mod is to take the seeds that are dropping now as a consequence of my leaf breaking mechanic and use those to randomly generate seedlings or saplings to help reseed the forest so that you don't just end up with a patch of grass like this that's devoid of trees. There's an opportunity for the forest to be reborn. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that the entirety of those 3 trees have been consumed and there won't be any floating blocks. So I'll go ahead and let this one continue to burn out. Unfortunately, there weren't any seeds that were dropped either. And that's that. So now I'm going to go ahead and try the second case over here where I do have them connected across the ground, and maybe it'll start fires in multiple places. I expect the behavior will be different on this particular run. And these have some overlap too, so hopefully the canopy clearing code will kick in a little bit easier this time. And it looks like the pine tree will indeed be burned at the root as well as at the top. In this case, it did drop an acorn over here. I can see it. I'm gonna set the time so we get some light here. Alright, the maple tree has been completely burned. I don't see any maple seeds. And with that, all 6 trees have been burnt completely. So, that is the current status of this mod. I need to implement the sapling generation. That will probably happen in the next release, but I'm going to do some additional testing on this particular version, and then I'm going to push an update to the mod on the mod database. So feel free to download it, give it a try, tell me what you think. If you have any suggestions for improvements for fire-related code, let me know, and I will be happy to try to implement those when I have an opportunity. And also, if you notice any problems with the mod, feel free to speak up, because I enjoy troubleshooting more than I do coding in some cases. So, all right, thanks for watching. Later.